I'm Vikram Verma. I'm an IT trainer, and today we'll be learning about API handling in Python. In this video, we will go through with API basics, like what is it, its types, and then we'll see its uses. In this video, we'll see we will
about
go
those
through with
tools
API
that we
basics,
can use for
like
working with
what is
API.
it, its
We'll see
types,
some practical
and
stuff
then
of
we'll
API
see
as
its
well.
uses. In this
And with
video,
the
we'll
help
see
of we will
about
go
code
through with
operation. We'll
basics
check
that
out
we can
those
use
practical
for
stuff, like
working with
what is
API.
it. This video
Its
can
types,
become
see
very
some
fruitful,
practical
and
stuff
then
for those who want to learn about
in this
API
video,
handling.
we'll
We'll
see
we will
about
go
code
through with
operation. We'll
basics
check
that
out
we can
those
use
can
for
become
like
a
a
little
what
bit refresher for those who want to have a peek on API handling again. So let's get started. So API handling in Python. We are going to have a peek on a comprehensive guide for creating, reading, updating, and deleting resources via API. So first we'll learn about API handling, like what API is, how is it going to get work, and all such kind of stuff. Let's move ahead. So what is an API? API is an application programming interface. This is just a full form, by the way. So it allows communication between software application, like suppose we are working on one end and we want to communicate with another end. So at that time we need something. We need a little, we can say a little bit of server, a little bit of protocols, set of protocols by which we can send the request and then we can get the response. So what does API do? API allows communication between different software applications. It is a kind of server, we can say. Sometimes it is a kind of protocol, we can say, that we can use to retrieve and send data using code. Okay. So we need to write a set of code, and with the help of that code, we can send the request and we can get the response. It is all about such kind of communication. So there are a few types of APIs as well. Like there we can see REST, SOAP, and GraphQL. Okay. So I hope you guys are a little bit aware about such kind of types, or I should say architectural styles. So what about REST? REST is a kind of representational state transfer. What does it do? It is really most popular architectural style for web APIs. Now, when we are working with like suppose microservices or we are working with monolithic architecture, we need such kind of API. What it does, it is really most popular architectural style for web API. It has got stateless communication and it uses HTTP methods. Like what kind of methods? We have a few methods, but very, very popular methods are like get, post, put, delete. Such kind of methods are there, which are useful for having such representational state transfer API architectural style. It uses standard data formats like JSON or XML. It generally focuses on resources which are identified by URLs. So we have a specific URL. With the help of with the help of that URL, we generally reach to a resource and then we start working. We get some data. Sometimes we get the data, sometimes we do not get the data. When we do not get the data, we get the response code. And we get the data at the time also we get the response code. The difference is response codes are different. I should say status codes. This particular REST has got some advantage as well, like it is simple, scalable, and yeah. So it is really, really interesting and very popular style of an API. It is using worldwide nowadays. Very, very popular. And it can be easily integrated with modern web technologies. So we don't have to much bother about it. If you want to learn an API, we can directly go with REST. Even we'll also use REST as well. Okay. Another one is like if we go with SOAP. SOAP is called as Simple Object Access Protocol. It is a kind of protocol that uses XML for structured message exchanges. Okay. So here we are not using that user-friendly or developer-friendly format. We are going to use XML for a structured message exchange. It has got few key features like it works over HTTP, SMTP, and others. It has got higher security as well. And we should say like it is not so popular. Earlier it was like used and still it is getting used, but not in that big amount fashion. it has got a strict context-based communication. Still, it has got some advantages, like it is suitable for enterprise level transaction, which needs high security. Okay, it is like heavier than rest, so we can count this one as an disadvantage. If we are working with this, we need to work with schema. So it has got a long way to go with when we are working with SOAP. So we should be careful while using SOAP. What about GraphQL? It is a kind of query language for API, which is developed by Facebook. It has also got some key features like client specify exactly what they require. It generally reduce over fetching or under fetching. It means like directly we can hit that particular area what we
client
actually
specify
need.
exactly what
So
they
with the
require.
help of GraphQL, we can
It
write
generally
the query
reduce over
language and the
fetching
query
or
language
under
can directly hit
fetching.
towards that
It means
particular
like
directly
resource.
we can hit that particular
It
area
is
what
also
we
built on
specify
schema,
which
which
is
is
like
like
a
a
schema driven
schema-driven
API. And yeah, so single endpoint is there for all the queries. It has got few advantages as well, like it is having efficient data fetching, and it is ideal for dynamic or complex client requirements. Why generally do we use API? When we get some data, when we generally require some data. So we have some real world examples of API as well, like social media API, when we need to get some data from Twitter, Facebook, and when we want to get the data from weather API. So likewise, whatever kind of data we require, we need an API for getting that data and for making changes towards that data for our products. How API benefit AI and data science projects. To use an API, we make requests to a remote web server and we retrieve the data, whatever we require. So we can get a real-time data access. It means like whatever the data we are getting, it is not actually the obsolete data. We can get the real-time data. And we can directly hit the very, very large data sets that can become very useful for data science projects. And it is not like that every time we are going to get a kind of bulky data which we need to filter every time. We can get pre-processed data, so which is already enriched with filter and all such kind of stuff. So just we need to grab the data, and after getting the data, we are going to go ahead. So that's why if we are getting the data, we can get good benefits of API and data science projects as well. So when to use API instead of static data? That is a good question. That can be a good question. See, when we get static data, of course, we get such kind of data where we are not going to get any kind of changes into the data. So data gets rapidly changed. So rapidly changing data is there. So for data that changes quickly, like stock prices, okay, at that time static data is not required. For a specific subset of data, if we only need a small piece of larger data set, such as our own comments on Reddit, at that time, static data also is not required. And like doing complex computations, like Spotify can provide information like genres, and we can leverage if we want to get such kind of different music genre. At that time, we can leverage such kind of extensive data set and can do some computational resources. So at that time, static data is like not required. So we need API for getting that data on instant basis. Yeah. So that was a little amount of basic peek for API. And now let's come into the field of Python. Like what I'm learning Python. How can I use that API into Python? What is the basic way of using that API into Python? So if you are working with Python, of course, you have installed Python into your machine. And you were able to run few projects into Python, like basic projects. You can write the code, your code is running all good. But still, what more is required? So as you all know, Python is a big sea of set of libraries. So here also, we need to use a library. And the most popular library for API handling is request. This library is like magic. We just need to import that library after installing it, and then we can reach out to any kind of any mock data database, or we can reach to real database as well, or data set, I should say. We do have other libraries as well, like HTTP client, URL lib3, or GQL, like GraphQL. We have different kind of like set of libraries as well that we can use. Okay, so if you want to install this request using PIP, you can use PIP install request command. Using this command, you can easily install this request library into your machine. Okay, or I should say into that kind of a particular area where you are working. So we need to install this request library, and after installing this, we can start working on it. We are working with API. We have installed that request library. Things are okay with us. Now we need to make a little bit of operation. It is not like that we just need to get the data. We can do more than that. Okay, as you know that we are moving towards basics only, so we'll talk about the basics. So crude operation overview. So when we are working with data, these four different characters are really awesome. So what is crude? Create. When we need to add the new data. What is read? When we are going to retrieve extensive or existing data. If you want to update the data, for modifying existing data, and for deleting the data. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. Or some people say like CRUD operation as well. So it's up to us whatever we want to say it is. But we should know how we are going to work with it, of course. So when we are working with data, this operation is really, really, really popular and very basic. Every application does that. And for doing that, we need some HTTP methods used. What are those methods? For creating the data, we need post. For retrieving the data, we need get. For updating the data, if you want to like overall update, we can use put. If you want to partial update, we can use patch. And of course, for deleting the data, we have delete method. These are HTTP methods. So request library is going to help us with the help of those methods. All right. So yeah, of course, now we saw like what API is, we saw its basics, we saw how to install that request library, and now few key concepts of REST API. So now we are moving towards REST API. We have seen like three types of API: REST, SOAP, and GraphQL. We are not using SOAP, we are not using GraphQL, we are using REST here. Okay, so it has got endpoint, the very, very important one. So endpoint is what? When we need to set a URL. So we need a URL because we need to reach at some location. So for reaching that location, we need a URL. In a developing language, or like in our language, we generally say it as endpoint. So it is location of that resource. What about HTTP methods? As just in the last slide we have seen, it has got post, get, put, and delete. If we want, we can add some headers as well. Like there are fewer times we need API key for getting the data. Okay, because some data sets are really secure. So at that time we need API keys, authorization is required, content type is required. So such kind of stuff we need to put into headers. And of course the body. So when we are going to save the data and when we are going to update the data, at that time we require body. So data sent with post and put request. So these elements are really essentials if we are working with REST API. Endpoints, methods, headers, and body. We can skip headers most of the time because we generally do not go for authentication or authorization for getting the data when we are learning. And of course, when we are working with REST API, so we are reaching towards open internet. At that time, status codes are required. So the most popular is 200. If you are a developer and if you are able to get the data without any kind of hassle, at that time you can see this particular 200 status code that is called as an OK. When we are going to create something, we will be able to get the status code, which is 201. And for 400, suppose like we make a bad request, at that time we generally get this 400 status code. When we are trying to get a resource and the resource is not able to get, and resource is absent there, resource is not found, so we generally get 404. And if you are not doing anything, I mean, like there's no fault of us. At that time, we generally get internal server error. The problem is with server, not with our code. So yeah, there are a few key concepts of REST API: essential elements and status codes. Well, so when we are working with API, at that time, JSON placeholder is required. Okay, why should we go for JSON placeholder? It is like really useful for free and mock API testing. Okay, so with this like JSON placeholder, we can directly go towards like a particular data set, and from there we can get some data. Okay, it has got some available endpoints, post, user, and comments. Because we are working on basics today, so we'll use this particular endpoint, and we'll use post here. We can use users and comments too, but we'll use post here. So yeah, we are going to use JSON placeholder for mock API for testing. Okay, so yeah. So it's time to, let's see like what we are going to do here quickly, and then we'll write our code after that. So we need to set up the environment. So how to set up the environment? As we have already installed, I'm supposing we have installed request. So we are importing request and see. In URL, we are using HTTPS JSON placeholder typecode.com, and where we are reaching our endpoint is host. Okay. And here we are using get method. Okay. So get method is for retrieving the data. We'll pass the URL and we'll get some data. Okay. Here we are not using any particular ID for getting the data. So it will get the whole stuff in one go. If we want, we can read the data. Otherwise, we can make ourselves happy like we were able to get the data. And then in which format you want to get the data? JSON format. JSON is quite popular. Otherwise, data is in quite rough format. So rather than reading that rough format, kindly use the JSON format data. So with the help of JSON method of response, we can see the data of JSON. Okay, so that's how we can set up the environment. And yeah, so how do we create that? The same, we need to create a post in this endpoint, on this endpoint, I should say. Okay. And what we need to create, like title, having sample post, and body is this, and user ID is 1. Okay. See, there you will be able to get the output that the post has been created, but at the same time, you will not be able to see the real post created into the real data set. Why is it so? Because it is mock API. It is not going to let you make any changes into the real data set, but mocking is there. So we will assume that we have created the data. At the same time, we will get the response that, man, you have created the data. Okay. So here we are using post method, which is having this URL and the data. All right. And there we can see whatever we have saved, whatever we have created. So that is create. Okay. After creating the data, if you want to read, so there you can see user ID 1 is there. We have set user ID 1 while creating the data. Here in our endpoint, we can put 1 with the URL. Okay. So it will directly reach towards that particular endpoint where the user ID is 1, and it will get that particular data and we'll be able to see that record. Okay. So this is read operation. What about update operation? As we have worked with user ID 1, so we need to go with that URL and I need to update the content. Okay. So title is like updated title. Whatever the title earlier was, we changed the title, and body, we made the change here. And we have put the request to URL, and there for JSON, we have updated the data. Okay, the data will get updated, but at the same time, the updation will not be able to see the real data set because we are making a mock API request and we'll see the response.json. Okay, there you are. And we'll be able to see the updated data. At the same time, if we want to make changes for deleting the data, so we need to reach towards that post and then we need to make a request called as delete. Okay. So after making that request, we'll be able to delete that particular post, which we have created, which we read, we have updated, and now we are deleting that one. And then after deleting, if everything is okay, so we can check our status code is 200. Okay. If we are finding that status code, good. We can delete that particular data. So this is the whole operation that we generally do while working with data. So they see this is not the whole story of the picture. This is just a kind of like starting the beginning because we generally do a lot in API handling rather than these. These are very basics operations. We generally go with like such kind of securized data where security is quite required. We for that data we need to use API key, and then we can directly move ourselves into the data and can make changes over there. We can do such kind of stuff. But whatever we do, every time we need to go with CRUD operation. That is for sure. That is for sure. Okay, because we generally go with the data for having changes into it, for having reading the data, for making any kind of updation, deletion, CRUD operation we generally do while working with data. Okay, so let's begin. Let's go with our Visual Studio Code and let's write some code. So let me share my Visual Studio Code with you all. So there I am, and yeah, I believe. So there you can see I have already opened a folder named as API handling, and I'm quite sure that my Visual Studio Code is shared. Okay, fine. So it is like quite shared. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a file here named as suppose like api.py. Okay. So this is the file name that we can see here. And let me open the terminal first. So here's the terminal. And for the sake of just having like checking, we can install our request. So let's see the command that was required for installing. Okay, so let's go there, and we had the command for having it. Okay, so there you are. That is pip install and request. So let's go with that, and let's try to run this command. Let me share this. So pip install and request. Okay. So it may take a little bit of time. So I have already, there you can see I have already started this stuff, and this has been already installed that particular library. So it is saying like requirement already satisfied. Okay. So yeah, we can begin our writing code here. We can import the request first. Okay, so kindly import the request, and after importing the request, we need to go with the URL. And here our URL was HTTPS, and that was like JSON place holder dot typecode.com, and we were using the endpoint post. Okay, so I'm assuming this is our URL. And first, let's try to make a get request. So what do I do? Let's create an object there, or yeah, and request dot get. We are using the get method, and let's go with the URL only. We try to go with the URL, and yeah, here we can go with like if response dot okay. If you are getting like okay response, so kindly print the data, kindly print the data. That's so response dot JSON. Okay. So kindly print the data. Else, kindly print failed to fetch data. Okay. And at the same time, we can see whatever the text we got into the response. Okay. Let's see. So error may be there. Let's see. I'm going to run this code. So for running this code, let's run this command python api.py. And okay, fine. So our request was correct. So there you can see we are able to get the data. So I'm not going to read it, whatever it is, but it is having a user ID and ID, a title, and a body of it. Okay. So these are four keys we can see here, like user ID, ID, title, and body. Fine. So yeah, we got the data. At the same time, if we want if we want to get a particular user ID data, like suppose we need like when we want to get a user ID one data, suppose. So here we are going to create an object one more time. Params is like ID. Okay. And let's go with like one, right? And here, so what I need to do, rather than created this particular line here, let me create that line there. And here we need to pass that parameters. Okay, params, which should be this. All right, params. And then let's see if we are able to get this kind of data or not. So I made some changes here. I'm trying to fetch a single record. So yeah, Python API.py, and there we are. There you can see we have seen a single record like user ID1, and title and whatever. So here, if we try to go with like get single request, we can get a single record. If we try to go with multiple request, I mean like no parameter, it means it will retrieve the whole record at the same time. In one go, it will retrieve the whole record. Okay, fine. So here we are. So I'm making this as comment. Okay. And let's try to go with post request. So here, let's try to go with post request. So one more time, I'm importing request here because I have commented that. And rather than writing again that line every time, and this one also, let me just copy and paste this stuff. Okay. So, and of course, I need to make some changes because that is going to be a post request. So first we need to reach that endpoint. After reaching that endpoint, there's no need of using with this. And before making this request, I need to make the data. Okay, that is required. So let's create an object here of named as data. And in data, we can create like title. And title is having suppose sample post. We are having like sample post. And we can have like body. And in body, we can say like this is demo post. And here we are providing a user ID, which can be, suppose like we are putting here user ID 190. Okay. And after doing that, here we need to make a change. Rather than get, we need to add post, and URL should be the same because we need to reach that endpoint. And JSON should be that data. Okay. JSON should be that data. And now here we need to make a little change as well. So rather than okay, we are checking here if response status code is like 201 because 201 belongs to created. So it will show like resources created. So here we can get an output like response created. Okay, response created, and making it a little format. All right, and that's it. I think like, yeah, response.json, otherwise fail to created, fail to create data. Okay, fail to create data. It will show fail to create data. So there we are. Let's see one more time what we did. We have imported a request, URL is there, and the data that we need to save. And here in we have used the request post method where URL and JSON data we are providing as a parameter. And then we'll check if the response status code is 201, then kindly print response has created, or like response created, data is there. Otherwise, or here we can write like a resource created rather than response. Resource created, and otherwise, if it is not going to get success, then fail to create the data. Okay, I made changes. I saved it, and let's run this. Okay, it is saying like resources created where title is sample post and whatever. So if we try to go towards this one, we'll not be able to see the data because it is not going to make direct changes over there because it is mock API. Okay. So on that basis, we can create the data. So we are thinking like data has been created. And if we want, we can change the data, we can update the data as well. Okay. For updating the data, we need to make a little request like, but before that, let's try to fetch the data. So I am making this as comment, and here, let's make it uncomment, and rather than 1, I'm just writing 190. Okay. So let's see. So here it is saying like nothing is there. Why is it so? Because I said data is not going to create in real. Okay, that is a mock API. So please take care of that. At the same time, one has already been created from the provider side. So we'll be able to see the user ID one, but will not be able to see the user ID like this one. But let me just do one thing. Here I go, and let's go there. Making a little change over here, and okay, so first let's create the data. Okay, so I created the data first and make this as comment. Okay, make as comment, and now try to run the whole code in one go. 190. Okay, let's see what output we'll get this time. All right, so there you can see resource has been created, which is like sample post, and user ID is 190 and ID is like 101. Okay, so here let's go with ID 101, and let's try to go with that. Okay, so there you can see we have tried both stuff like user ID and ID. I was like providing user ID into ID, and I was thinking like it will be able to get the data, but it didn't. But now this time we tried to put the correct ID, which is like 101, and this time I thought like it will be able to get the data, but again not. Why is it so? Because it will not created the data on real basis. That's why it will not be able to get the data. Okay. So what if we want to get the data? We need to create our own server. So with the help of Flask API, we can do that. Okay. Flask is a framework. It has got many libraries and all such kind of stuff. So with the help of Flask, we can create our own server. At that time, we can happily play with our own API endpoints. There we can see our data is getting created, our data is